The goal for today is how to feel disappointment. That's a heavy one, without collapsing into self doubt and without losing trust in yourself. Because the typical flow of what will happen is that disappointment hits. We tend to move into self doubt, right? We move inward. And then what happens is we begin to doubt ourselves, and our trust in ourselves to make decisions or have clarity in moving forward gets crashed out. And so we're going to go through all of this today in terms of what those patterns are, how we can begin to shift them, how to sit with disappointment. And then we're going to do the hypnosis portion to really help us nestle in with disappointment, take it out of the personalized scope so that the self doubt doesn't bring us down, and to move forward. So I'm pumped. So let's talk about what disappointment is. Disappointment is the emotional response to an expectation that didn't match reality. And disappointment can come, it's its own feeling, it's its own energy. Disappointment is what we call that catabolic energy, where it really brings you down, right? It breaks you down. It's a very egocentric state. And that doesn't mean that you're a narcissist. It just means that we tend to go inward and feel it, and it feels like everything is my fault, right? I'm disappointed. What did I do to cause this to happen? And disappointment, we've all experienced it, right? It's like, oh, I thought, oh gosh, when I was a kid, I thought I was going to get this overshare, but I'm gonna share. But all I wanted for Christmas from Santa was a an answering machine for my phone. Because back in the day, I'm 44, back in the day, we had answering machines so you didn't miss your high school friends calling you and finding out what they were doing. And I didn't get that for Christmas. I was so sure that I was going to get that, right? My expectation, as we're going to talk about in a minute, was that that was what I was getting. That's what Santa would want to bring me, or my parents would want to bring me because I wanted it. And that was not what happened. I did not get it. And I was so disappointed. And it was more that, this connection to life and to friends and, how we were all going to find each other. I grew up in New York City. So it's not like it was just like this one place where you all hung out. So there was a disappointment, right? And it has to do with this idea of expectations, right? Expectations, if we look at them, is the mind's projection of what it believes is going to happen, right? Because remember, when we go back and we look at the subconscious mind, everything that we know to be true has happened, right? We've experienced it. And when we head into the unknown, we are looking at scary. We're looking at, I don't know what to expect. So we create these expectations based on the beliefs or things that we want, goals that we have. We have these visions of how it's all going to play out, and it gets really exciting. We build around that. And so when these expectations or these things that we're working toward, these visions that motivate us and help us manifest, don't manifest in the way that we thought, we end up with disappointment. And these expectations, they're like these quiet internal agreements that something's going to play out a certain way. And it's like we bet on it. We hedge our life on it. We create energy around it, and it's motivational for sure. But when expectations and reality come into a crash, it can lead to disappointment. They talk about like the quotient of like the ratio of reality to expectations, and like when one is higher than the other, you end up with disappointment. The other, you end up with happiness, right? The more real you can be about things, the better off you can be. But that doesn't always help when you want to dream big and you want to create these amazing things and you want to manifest. You have to have that belief. So we end up in this really tough spot of like, how do we move forward with what we want, and how do we manage disappointment? Now, my goal is not to have you never feel disappointment and the emotions that come along with it, because that would be unfair. I would be providing unrealistic expectations. But what the goal is for us today is that we can move through disappointment and not make it personal. Because here's what happens, why it matters. Once an expectation forms, your system, right, as I mentioned, begins to prepare for that outcome. It gets emotionally attached to it. It factors into your sense of stability. It begins to help you build identity in relation to something you're working on. And so when it doesn't happen, it feels like a rug has been pulled out from underneath you, right? It feels like, how did this happen? What happened? And it's shocking. There can be shock that also gets tied into all of this as well, because sometimes our disappointment really comes out of left field, and it sometimes it's a slow burn, sometimes it's just a quick punch in the face. We don't know, but and this is why. It's because we are emotionally preparing for an outcome that we want, and we emotionally invest our time into these outcomes and in people to these outcomes. Why this is important? When something doesn't go as expected, your system needs answers, right? It's going to ask why. Because again, now the disappointment is going, what happened? What the heck? Where did this all go wrong? How did this, what changed, right? And the first thing that we do is we're going to go inward, right? So, why? We're going to ask why. And again, you know how I feel about why questions. I think why questions are very hard to answer, right? Why did you do that? And it's like, I don't know why you did it versus what happened. Let's look at what happened, right? That would be a much better question when we're looking at disappointment of what happened. So something to know about the subconscious mind. Your subconscious is built for pattern recognition and protection. Remember, it doesn't care if you're happy. It cares if you're safe. So when something breaks expectation, it scans for mistakes. It's going to scan for misjudgment. It's going to scan for signals that you missed. And because if it can find the error, it believes it can prevent it next time, or it can fix it. If I knew what was wrong or what went wrong, I would know how to fix it, or I would be able to avoid it. Right now, you're going to begin to create coping mechanisms for disappointment, because who wants to feel that? And this is what your subconscious does. It's like, I just need to understand this, and then if I understand it, I can avoid it. And I because disappointment is painful, right? No one wants to feel disappointment. Is anybody out there running around going, oh, I want to feel disappointment, disappointment's so great, let's get disappointed? No. But the more that we can learn to tolerate it and the more we can learn to move through it, the better we get. And we see this a lot with children, right? It's like, let them be disappointed so they can build their coping mechanisms and their emotional tolerance to it. So as they grow up, it doesn't hit them as hard. But that only works depending on the type of personality traits that you're learning. But again, this is the one thing we want to make sure that we don't internalize it. The problem, not everything that disappoints you is something you caused. That's a tough one for a lot of people to sit in. And if you haven't gone through a recent disappointment, it might seem like a very reasonable and logical statement to make, that, of course, like, disappointment's not always about me, right? People people change, right? When you're in a relationship and maybe you get broken up with, things change, dynamics change, energies change, life changes, people move, right? So many different things, circumstances change, situation shifts, information that you had, maybe it wasn't complete, maybe the timing wasn't right, but your mind still tries to make it about your judgment, because that's what it wants to do. Again, like I mentioned, disappointment is a high ego state. We crash inward. We want to understand things, and when we go into those catabolic states, kind of like the victim energy, right? That very low but high catabolic energy. We sit in it for a while. There is a benefit. We can look at it to go, what is this trying to show me? But not everything is worth us taking responsibility for. Sometimes it has nothing to do with us. And that makes it hard because it takes it out of our control. So, why it feels personal. Expectations involve internal commitment, right? As we talked about, we align our lives around that. You didn't just observe the situation, you aligned with it. And so when it falls apart, it feels like your decision was wrong. Your read was off, your trust was misplaced. And it quickly becomes self doubt that manifests into, maybe I can't trust myself. how many people I know when I go through disappointments or hardships, I constantly go into the I'm not good enough mentality. And those are very common. They say about 95% of people have the I'm not good enoughs that come up over and over and over. Don't quote me on the 95, but if I remember correctly, it was like an extraordinarily high percentage that people go into. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. It's our inner critics coming up. It feels really personal. And that's a wonderful thing. It makes you human to have these emotions, these capabilities and capacities to feel that and take responsibility for a situation. But again, that's only part of it, especially when you're in a relation, whether it's work or with someone else, of what's going on, that there's only part of it that we really truly understand. For example, I know my business partner, there's something going on in their life. It has nothing to do with me of what's going on, but I'm disappointed all the same in how things played out. So that's real. And it's allowing myself to feel my feelings because I am disappointed. It is real that things are shifting and changing. Um, and I don't have to go all hyperbolic or catabolic over it, that and spiral out that this is like the worst case scenario, and then the fear mongering and all of that, because that's where our brain goes, that it's like catastrophic, versus just going, no, I'm allowed to have these feelings of what's happening. So that's what your mind says. It's like, if it's me, I can fix it. It feels safer than this was outside of me, because if it's outside of you, guess what you get? Big gaping hole in the subconscious mind, and that is really unpleasant. So this is the loop, right? This is what we want to have to stop that spiraling loop, right? Again, it's not about not having the disappointment, it's about stopping the spiral into self-doubt. And that starts with having an awareness of that's the pattern that is beginning. We want to put that stopgap in, that instead of saying that didn't work out, to we want to stop it. We want to say that didn't work out and that's okay. Instead of saying, what did I do wrong? Because that is the quick shift where we're going to go, it's not that I did anything wrong. I can take responsibility for something later if I need to, but this didn't work out, right? We keep it generalized about the experience, not internalized about you. Then what you're going to do is separate yourself. This didn't go how I expected, and it didn't. And that's an honest, fair statement. And you're going to pull back from meaning making. Now, humans are amazing because we are creative, we are logical, we are rational, but we also give meaning to everything, right? And it's okay to say, I don't have the full picture yet. I don't know what's going on for this other person. I don't have clarity, right? There's that clarity word that we talk about in astrology that's been coming up over and over, right? And I don't have the full picture, and that doesn't mean that I need to quickly go to it's my fault. And then you're going to reality check the facts. Okay? This is where we want to get into the reality of what happened versus the expectations of what should have been, because the shoulds are a real bitch. They can really send you down a dark, dark, dark hole. But if we can look, it's like, what? They're the what questions, right? What actually happened? What did I assume? What was outside of my control? And you can even ask yourself, like, what part did I play in this and what can I do better? But again, we want to start with just the reality, the facts. Like, what happened to get me to this place to date? Because like if we look at them, it's like, yes, when I look at my experience, there's nothing I would have changed. I acted genuinely, I acted authentically, I acted with integrity, I shared all my feelings going forward, I shared like what I wanted, what I needed. So like I really can't take responsibility unless there is something that I just did that was absolutely wacko. But I really can't think of that, so I have to put myself and go, this isn't about me, but I'm really disappointed because what I wanted and where this was going was really important to me. And sometimes you need to regulate before you start reflecting on those questions, because you might notice that disappointment leads to some very strong and emotional feelings of sadness, overwhelm, spiraling thoughts, all of that jazz. You might even go into the anger states too. Those perfectly reasonable that you would feel that way. So sometimes we just need to ground ourselves, get a little distance, get a little space, get a bit more perspective to think a little bit more clearly and rationally versus emotionally and reactionally. So give yourself back stability, right? I did the best given the information I had, and now, once you're there, what do I want to do about it, right? It's not solving the whole experience. It's what is the next step, right? If anyone's a Frozen fan, it's like do the next right thing. What is the next right thing for you? Right? And to also be very genuine about how you feel about everything. So important. Just going to check over here. Lori, thank you for giving me some structure to address my reactions, although it can be hard to access in the moment. Lori, it's so hard. Sometimes in the moment, I always say emotions are kind of like a car on a hill. When the car starts to roll down the hill, we can have a little bit more perspective. We have the ability to stop the car from rolling. It's like, oh, I'm feeling this thing, right? That awareness. But once that car starts going, that car of emotion is just going to get stronger and stronger. And it's really hard to stop those reactions. And sometimes we just need to ride those out. So it's fair. And that's why before you get into like the rationalizing and the reality checks, just getting yourself that grounding structure to, feel it. Um, Ground yourself, regulate through breath, go for a walk. I always say actions taken out of anger lead to resentment and regret. I know when I react angrily, uh, I always feel really stupid afterwards, but emotions are strong. They're real, and your emotions are real, and you're allowed to have every single one of them. So, I'm glad that gives you a little bit of structure. If anyone ever needs these notes, also please feel free to DM me, email me, visit me on my website. Whatever you need, I'm available. So happy to send those along and share too. So let's see what's next on this. All right, so here we're getting to the hypnosis portion. And I want to reiterate that the goal is never to avoid disappointment. It is an emotion on our emotional rainbow, right? There are some emotions we really love, like joy and bliss, and then there's others that kind of aren't our favorite. That move into those, but they all have a positive benefit, and they also have a detriment, right? They're neither good nor bad. They just are there, and sometimes they help, and sometimes they do feel very hurtful. And they can be one and the same. So I always say when I go through disappointment, I'm allowed to be disappointed, but I want to look at what was I expecting and then allow myself to say, okay, well, I really was looking forward to X, Y, and Z in my future, and this is what I'm disappointed about. How can I get that now in another way? Because our anger is going to be the dictator where it's like, oh, I can't have that anymore. I want that. It's not available. But there are many ways. Oh, I can't believe I almost said that to skin a cat. I don't even know why that's a thing or a statement. There are many ways to bake a pie, and there are many ways to visualize your future. So sometimes we just need to go back to our expectations, our manifestations, our goals, our wants, recalibrate them in a new way, given the data that we had. And sometimes we just need to sit in the shit of the unknown that's outside our control. And that is so unsettling. And I get it. But it's remembering what we can control and how we can take back our power to move forward in a new way. And being able to say, hey, maybe in a year, I'm going to look back at all of this and say, I'm so glad that all happened because it set me off on my next trajectory that was so much better and cleaner. Hindsight's always 2020, but as we go through these things, remember it's a process to give yourself some grace.